is Robert Burton, and I am a retired band director from Fayetteville, Georgia. Here's going to be a breakdown of the presentation today. Um, why is communications with your stakeholders so important? I think it's the single biggest issue young teachers have today, in my opinion, and more on this in just a moment. I'll cover with you some ways of communicating that I used in my teaching career and with some of the ways that are more prevalent with today's teachers. However, I can't say it enough. Don't let them see you sweat in your communications. Be in charge and show you are in charge, but in the right way. We'll go over some challenges in communicating to your stakeholders, as well as finding out what your strengths might be in your communications. Every single topic today can be done or achieved in many different ways. Most of these are from my own personal experiences. Hopefully, you'll be able to use some of these strategies to help you at some point in your career. Some of these items will be repeated in my presentation because I feel they are important, and I've seen so many young teachers fall short on some of these items. I don't know everything. Trust me, I do not know everything. But what I will give you is my experiences from a 33 year of teaching in several different environments. As I said before, I live here in Fayetteville. Um, just celebrated our 37th anniversary to my lovely wife, Melanie, just this past Wednesday. We do have four daughters. And yes, fun fact, we had two weddings 7 weeks apart. Talk about some challenges. That was fun. My family is a family of educators, as you can see there. For some of you that may be from that area, my daughter teaches at Warner Robins High School. She's a drama teacher, and my son-in-law actually teaches at Fagan Middle School. And some of you may be in this same boat. I started teaching when I was 23 years old to high schoolers. So that meant I had some 17 and 18-year-old kids that I was teaching that were just a few years younger than me. And yeah, I started teaching 2 days after getting married. So that was a fun challenge too. I'm from Gadsden, Alabama. You see listed there the colleges that I attended. And yes, we retired the spring of 2019 before COVID. Woohoo! After 33 years of teaching. I listed the two schools. I was only in two schools in 33 years. And I want you to take a look where it says in Cedartown High School. Had a school of about 900, high school, 9 through 12, about 900 kids. Peachtree City, when I moved to J.C. Booth Middle School, it went to about 1,100 to 1,300 grades 6 through 8. And you can see that the band program just about tripled in size that from what I actually came from. So again, there's some challenges I'll address here in just a moment. In teaching in just two schools, though, for 33 years, I had 8 principals and 7 assistants. Neither school was in trouble or in flux when the administrators moved out. Every administrator you come across will require different ways of keeping them happy. And more on this a little bit later. Again, going into a little bit of my craziness of my background, love RV camping, love Disney World, Disney, everything about Disney. Took my bands 20 years straight to Disney and been at the Disney parks for over 100 days between band trips and family trips. Actually, a lot more than that. I'm a ham radio geek. I volunteer at the National Weather Service, taking in storm reports via ham radio. It's kind of like the old movie Twister, sitting in a chair talking to people that are looking at a tornado. And I have a crazy Christmas light show with about 2.2 million views on YouTube with my light show. Now, you can use the term stakeholders. You can use the term partners. You can use insert descriptor here. For my purposes today, I'm going to use the term stakeholders. I got this from a phrase from one of my favorite principals. My favorite principal used this term with business partners of the school. Some of the businesses would team up with the school in various ways. It was with whether it was with money or providing equipment. I see stakeholders now as more of a part of a group of people that can either make or break your music program. And for me, there are many who fall into that category. So again, who are your stakeholders? Yeah, your students. This is kind of an obvious category. Your students are the first contacts you have in the band and in the program. So foster a good relationship with your students, regardless of what school you are at. You want your students to enjoy and have fun in your class. When you make that happen, your program will have its first step in thriving. My most successful years in teaching had a strong band booster program. Now, again, this can be any type of booster program. This could be even your parents, that if you're teaching a general music class, that could possibly help you. You have to let them know that you need that help. Your parents can be the air that breathes life into a volunteer program, which could support your program for years down the road. Also, happy parents generally make happy administration. So find ways to get your parents on your side in every aspect of your program. Now, whether you have a weak administration or a strong administration, your administrators can make or break your program. Also consider keeping a healthy communication line between you and the rest of the staff at your school, especially your school secretary, your school's bookkeeper, and even your custodial staff. Cannot count the number of times that I would had a messy band room and I couldn't get it cleaned up before the next day. Custodial staff took care of it. Wonderful custodial staff, that especially at JC Booth. Keep that custodial staff happy. Now, your community, it goes without saying how important in most cases that your community can really be a boost to your program. I'll go through a portion of that how in just a few minutes. Now, I find both my young and veteran teachers alike think that students will just follow their every command or instruction asked of them. That's not always the case. You have to be able to communicate with these students what your desires are. How do you want this to be sung or played, for example? You have to be able to communicate with these students on the level that they will understand you. I find some teachers communicating with their students on, look how much I know, or on a level that the students really just don't understand. Remember that you are the teacher, and you have to communicate well enough for the students to get it. The better they get it will be the better they perform at their next concert, for example. I always say, teach to the kid. You're going to hear me say that several times. Teach to the kid. Communicate to the kid. If you can't communicate the curriculum to the students, how can they communicate it back to you or the audience in music? Remember, you do not see the parents on a daily basis for the most part. So what you communicate, with your parents, you need to impress them on every front. After all, you're probably the one person that will communicate with their child the most during the school year. They want to see you as a positive role model in their child's life. You have to be clear and concise with your desires, instructions, needs, and other aspects of the program that you may need support from them for your music class, band, chorus, orchestra. After all, your parents are key in having a successful program at whatever school you're teaching at. Now, being a good communicator is something that every administration wants for each faculty member in their school. If you're communicating well, then most of the time you will not have the parents complaining about you to the administration. If you have desires or needs for your program and you're communicating these on a professional level to the administration, you are probably going to get more out of them. That could be in the form of money, physical needs such as classroom items, instruments, music, or just moral support. Keep your administration happy, and you'll probably have a better chance of having a successful program as well. Now, here are some examples where communicating with your community is very important to your program. Community performances, be it sports games, football games, basketball games, parades, or any performance outside of your normal student parent groups that see and hear you on a normal basis. Remember who and what the performances are for. Who are you trying to impress? I know of a certain high school who has a separate football marching band that does a wonderful job for the football crowds and then has a separate competition band for contests. I wonder who that is, Dr. Davis. Remember that possible future members to your ensemble can come from every performance that you do in the community. When your groups perform away from the normal parent school competition venues, the community sees you as the face of that particular school or school system. Let me say up front, fundraising was the one thing that I did not like having to do with my bands. I hated it, quite honestly. However, I'm pointing this out in this portion of the presentation why communicating with your community is so important. Most times when you are going out into the community, it is with fundraisers for most groups. So yes, it is very important to do this right. Many times it takes class time and performance prep time away from our ensembles. Unfortunately, as well, it becomes a necessary evil. If you do have to fundraise, don't let the kids nor the parents see that distaste for that fundraiser. It may be hard, but you got to do that. It will only do harm to that fundraiser and or the purpose of holding that fundraiser. Most school programs will have to fundraise outside of their normal school budgets. That is not always the case, but for most. For larger communities, it might work a little different with your fundraising strategies. However, with your smaller communities, it is vital to be able to communicate effectively. After all, it is a smaller group within that community that you're trying to fundraise with. Always keep in mind, especially with smaller communities, represent your program and your school as if your program is a well-oiled machine. After all, you should be the biggest cheerleader for your program. Here are a few examples that I have done with a smaller community and a larger community. Now, Cedartown, Georgia, up in northwest Georgia, just south of Rome. Population at the time when I was teaching there was about 9,000 people. Again, the school was about 900 kids, grades 9 through 12. Here's one fundraiser that we did. We had a circus. It was a big circus. I cannot find or remember the exact date, but believe this was in the late 80s to the early 90s. Somewhere I have a picture of me riding an elephant around the circus ring. Woo, talk about being saddle sore. Keep in mind, this was before you had personal email or the internet. So several parents would have to come into my office and literally call through the phone book. There used to be this thing called a phone book, and it was made of paper, and you had to go page by page to find the telephone number. And they called through that entire phone book. After that, we were given, there were a few particulars we had to do, but otherwise the circus took care of the rest. The community loved this. We made around $6,000 on the project. Would we do it again? No. However, the community loved it, and it really went over well for PR in the immediate and surrounding communities. Now, let's go to a different, larger community. Peachtree City, Georgia. At the time that I was there, it was about 30,000 when we did this particular fundraisers. We did luminaries, very unique. Basically, it's all it is candle and sand in a white bag. These were sold in kits of 8. The candle company where we purchased these through sold the seconds from the candle company, the ones that didn't make the cut to sell. However, they were scented, so we ended up with every scent imaginable. And you thought Bath and Body Works was smelly. Teachers in the entire building could smell down the hall when the thousands of candles would arrive by tractor trailer and were stacked in the band room. We were doing such a large order with the candle company. They later started selling us first, and these were unscented, thank goodness. It was a huge hit with the community till about the early 2000s. The city's fathers declared December 24th, Christmas Eve, as Light Up Peachtree City, and would credit and encourage purchasing these through the J.C. Booth band members. People would actually call the school and ask when the kids were going to be selling luminaries. People were saying, please come to my house so I can buy some. Or in other words, people were saying, please come to my house so I can give you money, which was pretty incredible. In the 90s, we were able to pull in enough money so as not to do any other fundraisers other than the luminaries. Any fundraising we got through the school system was just icing on the cake with the other money that we pulled in. And it was not much that we got from the school system. We started allowing students to use money from their sales to pay for part or all of their spring trips. At the height of the sales, we probably brought in approximately $20,000 a year just on this particular fundraiser. It was a lot of work. It was 3 to 5 tons of sand that was donated. When the principal saw how much work was involved, he allowed me to take one day with the kids during the school day to do most of the work. Classes would make up the bags of sand from the tons of sand brought in. This worked out well, especially when we made it a challenge for the classes to compete against each other on how many bags of sand they could bag. Somewhere in the early 2000s, sales had dropped to the point that it was just too much work for the return that we were getting. Since we had a large number of people in the community, not originally from Peachtree City, most of them were leaving town to see relatives or travel on Christmas Eve. So again, know and communicate with your community. We did, and it was time to stop that massive fundraiser.
Mr. Burton.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to back up to allowing students to apply some of the fundraising money to their trip. Yes. And just you have to be careful. I think now this is recently with my husband's band come out that because of the nonprofit status of the boosters, things like that.
Okay.
That won't.
That's a very, very good point. We would always, Dr. Davis, we had in later years, we had some students that would drop out of band, and we would, they would request their money, and we would point out to them that you raised this money under the auspices of the J.C. Booth band. So that came into play. But what you just mentioned just then, again, I can see how that possibly has changed. So, the only advice I would have there for the people that are listening and for the future people that are listening, you do need, for your fundraisers, you definitely need to check out what your school policies are. Wouldn't you agree, Dr. Davis?
Yes, and we've also had to check with people who understand tax implications of the nonprofit status. So just do your homework before you do those things.
Yes, please. Okay. Because we communicated well with the communities, those fundraisers were a success. This success will always circle back around to the very first stakeholder in your program, which is the student. Your fundraising might be the only aspect of your program that the community sees. Just keep in mind how important it is for you and your program to be seen in a positive light. Communication is the most important thing you do with all of your stakeholders. It is basically your face. not only of the program, but you as a teacher itself. You can have the best performing band in the world, but if you're a terrible communicator, the word will get out and it will destroy your program. Because of the challenges many young teachers have today, honestly, mainly because of COVID, many administrators expect more from the young teachers than they do have in the past. Teaching is communicating. Young teachers, you have a lot of things going for you. Whether we old fogies like it or not, the kids or the youth, your students, can do relate to the younger teachers many times better than we older teachers. Knowing what works for the younger crowd many times is to your advantage. You have a lot of energy that just honestly we lack as far as being some of the older teachers. And we talk about the social media ins and outs, and a little bit more on this later. And again, it's just sometimes you as the teacher are able to relate to the youth better of today. For the veteran teachers, obviously you have more experience. You know what works for the different age groups. And this is something that I can't point out in going back to the young teachers. Sadly, for the young teachers, this does happen. Administrators and staff tend to listen more to the veteran teachers because of their experience. And this is something I experienced when I got into teaching. Many of my parents saw me as a kid. You know, I was just a few years older than their kids. So I wasn't the adult. And that's how some administrators and parents look at your stress level because of the experience with the veteran teachers will be lower when it's going to be sometimes much higher with a younger teacher just because of not having experienced some of those experiences before. This day and age, you're not going to be able just to put that information out there and just let them get it. You're going to have to be that salesperson. This is something I learned after 33 years of teaching. It's just not going to happen when you get in front of the classroom. You might be the greatest thing since sliced bread or came from a program that was just absolutely amazing and won all sorts of awards. Trust me, I've seen some people get out of the business of teaching because they could not communicate with their stakeholders. I've also watched and witnessed both young and veteran teachers not change, bend, conform, or whatever you want to call it to meet the needs of their students. I will say it over and over and over. Teach to the kid. For veteran teachers, the kids are not the same kids you might have had 5, 10, 15, even longer ago. For the younger teachers, remember, you are the teacher and adult in the room. You're not one of the kids anymore. And remember that they are not in that college band or chorus or orchestra you might have just graduated from. They're in turn. You can't expect them to perform on that level. Teach and communicate to the kid at the grade level you're teaching on. Then and only then can your whole program grow both in maturity and in growth. Now, some of the items, apps, platforms I'm going to mention might or might not be available to your school system. Some of the items I will mention might be outdated. After all, I am older than the hills. There are several of these I used in my last few years of teaching and really found helpful. I'll share those in the next few slides. Now, it goes without saying how important email is as a communication tool. However, I suggest you keep your personal email and contact info separate from your school email and contact info. Yes, I have made that mistake. And yes, in my later years, I had to tell parents and students, do not contact me via my home and personal email or even cell phone. After doing some research for this presentation, I wish I had used some other ways of communicating to parents and students. I'll go over those in the next upcoming slides. Now, email. This is something that if you can do, I suggest it. Keep it for the entire year. This is especially true for some of your parent emails. in something that happened with my school and probably about the last 10 years or so, we started an online roster, and within that roster, you could email parents, and they encouraged you to do that. Well, I found more often than not that that system would crash right at the worst time. So I personally got a separate email client, such as Gmail, and started using that kind of as my backup. And also, I went and got the parents' addresses and imported those into that Gmail account again. And we'll talk about this. There's tons and tons and tons of different platforms on all these things that you can use. I used folders to categorize all my classes and different bands and such. And you could do that. Again, this is with your email clients. And it makes it a lot easier to search with. Even though I show 10,000 emails there, I know toward the end of teaching, I had 20 and upwards of 30,000 emails. Most school systems, if you do have an email client they allow on your computer, most of them will ask that you delete all your emails for that year, honestly, just to save space. A lot of this sometimes is in the cloud, though they may still ask you to delete them. Because of that, I would copy over like vendors and parents' emails that I may need to keep for later reference. I would copy those into a document and keep that separate, so as not to lose those particular emails. This became helpful too, especially when I was on trips. I could email via my cell phone. So this is, many of these clients have apps that you can use too. So again, and you may be able to do this with some of the stuff that your school provides for you. But again, that just was very, very helpful for me. Use email within reason, though. You honestly cannot see the emotions in some emails. It's pretty much black and white, and honestly can be very cold in responses from both the parties. You don't necessarily have to call every parent on every situation that arises with a student. However, in some cases, a phone call to that parent would actually save you time than having to go back and forth in an email chain. I honestly did not start calling parents on a regular basis until my last years of teaching. It was a fault of mine that I wish I could have a do-over on. Also, put limits on when you're emailing parents. When I taught in Peachtree City, which is a pretty well-off community with some very well-educated parents, some of the parents not only thought they knew better than I, but some of the parents thought I should respond on their time and not my own. I put limits on how late I would answer emails, if at all, on holidays. I would also let parents know this information up front at the beginning of the school year. Yes, I still had some parents that got upset when I didn't answer their emails in a more timely fashion according to their schedule, but most backed off when I reminded them of my hours. In order for you to be a successful educator, you have to have me and or family time. Work hard at your job, but do take time for yourself and your family. Now, keeping a diary, keeping notes about your class, this kind of honestly goes back before the mention of email. And this may be old school, but unfortunately, many emails will be sent out on about issues that are happening with students in your class at times. Can you speak off the top of your head about Johnny or Sally doing XYZ behavior in your class on a day that happened several days back? Keeping notes can also help you with your organization of what you did in class so as to prep for that class the next day. You could even put a note about Johnny or Sally in that particular notes as well. I used to do this on Google Docs, and even used a projector in my class after cutting out, of course, any student information out of there, and would have that on the screen when that class walked in the next day. It helped in both keeping the class and myself on track with whatever literature that we were working on. Google Voice. And I'm sure there are many different options out there for this type of service. And again, you see, one of the things that I think that's unique about this, and I don't know, I'll admit my naiveness on this, is that it has a separate Google Voice number. So you're not even giving out your personal number for this. This is one that I'm kind of familiar with just a little bit. My daughter, she teaches in Warner Robins, as I mentioned before, drama at Warner Robins High School, and she loves this app. It gives her a way to document the voice messages to text. You are also able to set up your office hours and away messages, which is a really big plus. It's really, this is one way of really being able to be organized with your voice and text portions of the communications, especially with your parents. Now, I love Remind 101. For me, this was something I used exclusively when I would take students to Orlando on trips. We would normally have both the band and orchestra going together. Our trips would average about 155 people total. We would actually ask the kids to take their phones on the school trips, and they loved that. We required them to sign up for a specific Remind group that we set up. We allowed the parents to also sign up for that group if they wanted to as well. We had a separate parents group as well, separate from the students. That way we could send a text and let them know about our progress to and from the parks and when we were on our way home. Several times this was a very valuable item to have to let the parents know about delays in coming home. Our principal loved this because he was able to monitor and have all the information about the group as we traveled, especially if parents called him on wanting information who didn't sign up for Remind 101. It was so successful that this principal made all the teachers at J.C. Booth start using this with their trips when their students were off campus. Now, you're gonna see me recommend a lot of the Google product line from what I believe now is called Google Workspace. Mainly because it's what I know and it's what I used in my last 10 years of teaching. Many folks are moving to Microsoft Teams, as you see here. There are many different programs, apps that schools are using for word processors, spreadsheets, form making, etc. My suggestion with anything, though, is to find out what your school system allows and what works for you. The plus for Google is that it's free, and I'm sure that there's other items, and I believe Microsoft Teams is free also if you use that through the school. In the Google world, this was the biggest lifesaver for me, however, was Google Forms. In my last school system, every student was assigned a Chromebook. There in turn, both students and parents were very familiar with the Google products. At parent meetings, whether it was Meet the Teacher or one of my band parent meetings, I always had a set of Google Chromebooks for the parents and students to sign in on. The sign in was Google form that would update to a spreadsheet in real time. Using this, especially at the first of the school year, garnered me the most help during the year since parents are more eager to help with any volunteer programs or activities at the first of the year. Later, their schedules get filled up at other activities with other activities in the year. Once this form was in place, then it could be edited or copied for future forms that could be used during the school year and even emailed out. My numbers on Meet the Teacher night were large because I had an average of about 250 kids in the program. I would average about 200 or more parents at some of these meetings. Because of that, I would have a line in the form where the parents could ask questions within the form and then that way I could get information from them from that form on how I could answer those questions back to them if need be, whether it be email or I needed to call them. And one of the reasons for this is because on Meet the Teacher night, especially, there would be a 45-minute wait just to speak to me, just because of the sheer numbers that I had in all my classes. So again, this was one way to expedite just reaching those parents. Spreadsheets are easy. It's also used by Google Forms. Many times I would use these shareable spreadsheets with other teachers, band directors, especially in sharing my music library with other band directors and even parents that were chaperoning. And because of the cell phone apps that are especially prevalent in the Google world, it was very well accepted by my parents on trips. We would have a spreadsheet of everybody, and even though we had it in paper form, the parents could also get that on their cell phones. And so we would have the band on one sheet, the orchestra or tab, the orchestra on another tab, the boys on one tab, the girls on another tab. Keep in mind these were overnight trips, so it was very easy to search for, and that searchability made it especially helpful with the cell phone apps on some of those trips. Again, as I mentioned, in terms of communicating with your stakeholders, that being our students, you need to use all the tools available to you. Our students these days, and probably yourselves, are very tech savvy. So encouraging them to use these types of apps to better their playing or singing outside of your classroom is golden. Smart music is now on Make Music Cloud now, I believe. I use smart music from its very inception when it first came out. Just relegated to one computer basically in the classroom. So I was very familiar with the software when it became more readily available to the students at home. I would use the software for assignments, both with songs we were performing, technique exercises, and even method books, and even used it with sight reading in class. We used it to the point that our school system bought licenses for our students in class. So they did not even have to purchase this. Their parents didn't have to purchase this for themselves for home use. This made the students practice, and it gave me a way of keeping up with their lessons. Now, the biggest thing is I know there are other software solutions out there now available, and I really do encourage you to possibly look at this type of platform or this type of venue for your students. It worked really well for me. There are tons of tuners available, be it portable ones, the physical portable ones, or online ones, or the hundreds of tuner apps. Strobosoft was my favorite to use in class, mainly because I had a classroom with a huge 8 by 10 foot screen, projection screen in the band room. I would use my iPad by the podium and would have this projected in large form on the screen. Later years, I did start using tonal energy. I used this with some of my younger classes. The younger kids love to see this larger than life smiley face on the screen when they were in tune. They got a kick out of that. Also goes without saying how important metronomes are to your instrumental ensembles. I found this tool of communication especially helpful to my young musicians. They could actually see how to use it in real time in class to work out various hard sections, be it scales or technical exercises and passages. And again, don't assume that your students know how to use these, because I found many times, here, go use this app, and they just would pound that exercise at tempo, and yet they had no clue that, oh, let's start it slower and let's go one click, one click, one click. It might seem simple to you, but it doesn't seem so simple to some of those 5th and 6th graders that I was teaching. Again, teach to the kid. Now, this can kind of be a touchy subject, and you'll understand in a second why, and actually in the next couple of slides. There are many video platforms out there. There's so many different ways in which videos can help any musical ensemble, though. The biggest help for me as a band director was when I could show students examples of professional musicians playing and what good sounds should really sound like. This was especially helpful for the younger players. For some school system, YouTube is blocked. It was for my school system for a while. SchoolTube might be your friend in this case. There are many other video platforms out there. Just be sure and check with your school system's tech crew to see what is available, and if you're unsure about this. Social media. It goes without saying that most of the younger people are very social media savvy. you must check with your school system's policies about using social media for the classroom. There are probably other school approved social media platforms that is not listed here. Please, please, please check on what regulations are in place for using this tool for communicating to your various stakeholders. If you are able to use any type of social media, it can really be a big tool to get the word out about your programs. Possibly let your kids, your students, put together some sort of social media machine for your group that is monitored by you. Have it set up so that you have to approve what goes out first. Your school may or may not allow you to do this. The social media machine can be shared with various businesses, parents, and even with the school, be it the admin, teachers in the school, and students in the school in general. Now, what if your school system does not allow you to do social media as such? If the kids are not able to do to help or do the social media line, let the kids possibly help you with newsletters that might go out. Also, recycle newsletters or emails to remind your parents of upcoming events or assignments. In my newsletters, I would have a calendar of events that went out weeks, if not months, before a certain event. Over time, I would obviously delete the old, but start to include the new items as the weeks went on. That helped remind both myself about these items as well as the parents. In this day and age, you have to communicate weekly. Parents have a lot of things going on as well. Help them be organized about your activities. If you use social media, evaluate what you're trying to accomplish. What audience are you trying to reach in order to know which type of social media to use? Websites, tons of platforms, website platforms. And again, I'm not going to go cover all of that here, but I do encourage you to do something more than just the basic website with your general information on this. Again, this can be something that you can actually give to a parent to do as well. I know when we started getting into the Google atmosphere in my school system, they encouraged us to put in information on a website so parents could go to the main website and then see our information in there. And a lot of teachers, and myself included, just put some basic things in there. But I already had a website and a separate website and separate platform for that website. So I included that link in there and had a lot of information on that website. So you can, even though your school might require you of a basic one, I encourage you to try to see and maybe get a parent to help you with a separate website as well. All right, what are your strengths in communicating? Why is it important to recognize your strengths and weaknesses in communication? First, it gives you a better understanding of yourself, makes you realize what aspects of communications you're struggling at, and this in turn will help you work on those specific areas. Second, working on specific areas help you enhance those skills only, thus saving you time. Yeah, you'll appreciate that later. Third, and most important, it makes you realize your mistakes. At times, what we might consider our strengths might, actually be a weakness. And for me, honestly, and it took into my last probably 10 years of teaching, I was a horrible listener. I just did not listen. I went on my way. And later, I started listening more to what the parents' needs, parents' desires, the students' needs, and students' desires. And I'm telling you, it helped. It helped my psyche, and it helped the program grow as well. Okay, so your strengths. Are you artistic? If you are artistic, find ways to capitalize on it. I mean, if you're artistic, holy cow, there are so many different ways that you can use, be it the bulletin boards, the websites, the newsletters, video. Again, use that strength to help you. Are you a good talker? Can you just talk off the top of your head? Can you get in front of a crowd and be given a subject and just talk off the top of your head? Not literally. But again, if you are, use that strength. Use that strength or superpower. And I've listed some things in which that you can use that strength of being a talker. Use it. Capitalize on it. And again, this was a weakness of mine. Are you a good listener? Then some of the items listed here might be for you. Again, use this to your advantage. I found that I started having more parent conferences toward the end of my career when I started listening more, and I started having better experiences. Some of the teachers or kids that I had problems with, I started having better experiences because of that. So again, find out what your strengths are, because your strengths are your superpowers. This is so very true. It really can be your superpower. But think about your weaknesses. If you know about a weakness and you're going to possibly need to use that in your toolbox, then you're probably going to need to spend more time on that particular item or task. Don't lean on one strength. Different stakeholders are going to be reached in different ways, be it visual or audible. You have to be that showman, though. You're going to have to sell the product, which is your program. Oh my goodness, this was not my forte, but it's got to be your forte. Again, organization might not be your forte, but if you're going to have a successful program, it needs to become your forte. At the first of the year, think about what your goals or your activities you have coming up for that year. Write them down. Then break down the bullet points of what your needs are for that particular activity or goal. I did this, and it really did. It really did help me. Super communicator. Remember again that you are the biggest cheerleader for your program, be it students, parents, administration, and staff, or to your community. If you stumble at being a good communicator, it will show in various ways within your program. As I've mentioned before, don't let them see you sweat. You are the professional, and you can win over the before mentioned stakeholders by thinking through the process on how you're going to communicate this. You are the super communicator. You've trained for this. Now go win over all those people to make your program the best it could be. Coming to the end of the presentation, I have my contact information there. Some of you heard me talk about it the very first. I love working with young teachers. Please feel free to reach out to me for anything that you might have questions about, whether it's about this or something else. Also, if you want to see something about my crazy light show that I'm obsessed over, there's some of the information on that. And I want to thank you for coming to the presentation today. I want to thank Dr. Davis for the opportunity to speak to you today. Also, again, thank you for coming to the presentation. I wish you the best of luck for your future and current programs. Thank you.
Does anyone have a question for Mr. Burton while we have him for a couple of moments about communicating? All right, if you're uncomfortable speaking, you may use the chat. Well, thank you, Mr. Burton. And guys, do check out his links for his Christmas lights, because that's fun. I got to go see him in person a few times. But all right, thank you, Mr. Burton, and thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you. And again, if there's anything, especially Dr. Davis, you or any of your students, I more than happy to help. I kind of see this, and some of you may not have heard. Again, when I started teaching at 23, I was just just wailing about. I did have some assistant directors, but they helped, but I didn't have other directors out in the community. I had no idea. I can remember going up and having to do the Star Spangled Banner. It's something I didn't even think about. And holy cow, it was the day before. So it's like, oh gosh, kids, we started handing out the Star Spangled Banner, and let's practice that. So it's just the little things that a lot of people don't come and help. And that's where I guess myself, and there's some other band directors, you included, Dr. Davis, that want to help people, the young teachers. So again, anything that I can do to help, please feel free to contact me.
All right, thank you. And as soon as I upload our presentations per semester into our knowledge box. So about December, we'll start uploading these presentations into our knowledge box so that they're archived for people to see who couldn't be here today.
All right. Thank you very much. Take care.
All right, y'all have a great day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.